Good evening. We are continuing with Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. This is going to be 13a, probably 2, where we were by in the middle of the Gemara, where the Gemara says V'af Rebbe Savala Rav Nachman, that also Rebbe held that of Rav Nachman. Dama Ravin Bar Ravada, that says Ravani Bar Ravada. Maaseh be'adam echad she'ifkid diskia melech chametz etzel Yochanan chakukah. So there was a person that he deposited an entire bag full of chametz by Yochanan chakukah. Nikvu achbarim, the achbarim came, they made a hole in it. Vayah chametz mevatzvetz yotzet. So there was chametz that was coming out. Balifnei Rebbe, and he came in front of Rebbe. B'shar Rishonah, in the first hour, he told them, wait, maybe the owners are going to come back. Second hour, he said, wait, the owners are going to come back. Third hour, the same. Fourth hour, the same. The fifth hour, he went and he said, go and sell it. So we asked, my love, are we not talking about that you're selling it to the goyim, and that is like Shitat Rabbi Yehuda? And so the Gemara, Amar Rav Yosef, lo, li Yisrael, he was selling it to a Yisrael, just like the Shita of Rabbi Meir. Okay, that's what he was doing. Okay, fine. So says now the Gemara as follows. Okay, the Gemara says we're on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, right? 3 ways, 2/3 down. Amale Abaye, Abaye comes and he says, Ili Israel, if you're telling me now that the Rabbi Yochanan, right, was able to, if you're going to tell me that this Yochanan, what was his name? Chakukah, right, was coming and able to sell it to Israel, so Nishkel. Why can't he buy it for himself? Right? Why is it that he can't purchase it, right, for himself? So he comes and he answers, the Gemara says, yeah, Mishum Chashada, because of Chashad. Titania, because we learned in a Braita, גבי צדקה שאין להם עניים לחלק, פורטין לאחרים והם פורטין לעצמם. גבי תמחוי שאין להם עניים לחלק, מוכרים לאחרים ומוכרים לעצמם משום שנאמר, וייתם נקיים מהשם מישראל. Which means that the Gemara over here is giving us a chidush. If you have a גבי tzedakah, that he doesn't have any poor people to give out tzedakah to, he cannot come and start, he cannot start coming and redeeming the money for himself. He has to redeem it to someone else. Meaning I would come and give you the money, right? And you would be able to redeem it from me, right? But I cannot cash it in on myself. Why? They're going to suspect. What do you mean they're going to suspect? They're going to suspect that maybe Be'emet, I'm making for myself, right, a much better deal. So therefore, because of that, says Zalacha, yeah, he comes and he says like this, says Zalacha, Asur, or Gabet Tamchui. Imagine we have food, and all of a sudden, there's no aniyim to give out to, and we have a soup kitchen, we have a lot of food. I cannot come and sell it to myself. I have to sell it to other people. Why? Because of the same chashad, because of the same suspicion. But it says in the pasuk, "V'yitem niki me'Hashem u'miYisrael." Right? You have to be niki from Hashem and from Israel. So because of that, says the Gemara, even though we're telling you now that during the 5th hour we are going in the Shita of Rabbi Meir, and you could actually come and sell it to another Jew, we ask the question, why can't you sell it to yourself? Why can't you eat it yourself if you're already allowed to do it on the 5th hour? The Gemara answers very eloquently and said, no, very simple. We're not allowed to sell it to yourself. If you would sell it to yourself, it means that basically that you might be cheating the system. So Amale Ravada Bar Matna, Rav Yosef says Ravada Bar Matna to Rav Yosef, Beferush Martlan, you told us Mefurash, Se Muchran Lenochrin Ke Rav Yehuda. So says Ravada Bar Matna to Rav Yosef, what? You told us explicitly, right? You were the one that told us. Remember that he got sick, so therefore he forgot his learning, right? So says the Gemara, so what happened? They come and they tell him, 1 second, but you taught us Mefurash that you're selling it to a goy. You're not selling it to a Jew, right? And you told us exactly like Rabbi Yehuda, which means that we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. So comes the Gemara and says, yeah, and therefore, if that was the case, so then that's actually a proof that we actually go like Rabbi Yehuda. Okay? Fine. Says the next part of the Gemara. Amar of Yosef says of Yosef, Kemanaz lahashmata de Rebbe. Like who does this go like this bright of Rebbe? Kerashbag like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. The Tzram was learned on a Mishnah. Amafkid perot etzel chavero. Imagine right now you give a deposit of fruits to your friend. Yeah, afilu hen avudim. Even if it's going to be that they're getting lost, whether it's because they're all becoming rotten or they're getting eaten by the rats, lo yiga bahen. You're not allowed to touch them. So imagine somebody comes and they say, Rabbi, can you wash my fruits? Say, yeah, besimcha, put it over there. All of a sudden, I see that they're all getting rotten. Or I see rats are just coming and mice are just coming and eating away. What does the Gemara say? The Gemara says, I'm not allowed to do anything with it. I can't do anything with it. Yeah, lo yiga bahen. Rashbag says, mochram bevedin. You do sell it, but you sell in front of a bedin. Meaning a bedin has to come and they have to be in charge of the sale. Right? Why? Because at the end of the day, you have a mitzvah shavat aveda. Meaning if you're just going to leave it there to rot, so then it's going to be a big problem. So therefore, you're not allowed to leave it there to rot. What do? You sell it in a bedin. But the bedin are going to verify that it was done bona fide and it wasn't done with any, with any tricks or whatever it is. Okay? So Amalei Abaye says, wasn't it stated, what are we dealing with? This machloka between Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is only in a case where there are fruits, right? Which means, right, just like the chisaron of that amount, which is brought down in the Mishnah, Bab Metzia Mem Amud Aleph, aval yoter mikde chesronan, mochram bevedin, v'chol sheken hacha tapside legamre. So he says, 1 second. Says Abaye, I don't understand what's going on. What are you telling me? You're telling me there's a case where a person comes and give you fruits, and it's starting to get rotten, or mice are coming to eat them up, to consume them. What does the Gemara say? Tanakama says, you leave it to rot. Says Rashbag, no. Sell it in a bedin. So says Abaye, 1 second. Yeah, if that's the case, and that's, again, this is the same type of case that we're going back. Again, we're trying to go back to the same case. Somebody gave you a pikadon of chametz, and now it's the first hour, second hour, third hour, fourth hour. Comes the fifth hour. What are you going to do with the chametz? You're just going to get rid of it? You're going to get it lost? Right? That was the last part that we did this morning. That's what we did this morning. That was the exact same last point that we did this morning. Okay, so the Gemara says, right, a person comes and he deposits to another person fruits, but it's actually chametz. And all of a sudden, what happens? He comes to him and he says, Rabbi, I don't know what to do. Joe Schmo gave me a whole bunch of chametz. He didn't sell it. I'm not selling it. I'm not allowed to sell it. It's not mine to sell. And all of a sudden, he disappeared. So the rabbi tells him, it's the first hour. Wait, he might come back. Second hour comes. Wait, he might come back. Third hour, fourth. When it comes to fifth hour, he comes and he says, go sell it in the marketplace. So we thought, who's he selling it to? To a goy. And that's a proof to Rabbi Yehuda. That's a proof to Rabbi Yehuda. But Rabbi Yehuda said, during the fifth hour, you're not allowed to eat it. You have to sell it to a goy. And you burn it at the beginning of the 6th hour. Says the Gemara, no. It's really who? Rabbi Meir. And really you're selling it to a Jew. So so why doesn't he sell it to himself? Sell it to yourself. Why do you have to sell it? You yourself. You have the fruits. Sell it to yourself. Eat it. Consume it. Says the Gemara, you're not allowed to. Why? Suspicion. We're going to suspect that you came and you said, listen, how much is it worth already? $10. It was worth $100. Is it worth $10? So fine, here, $10. My friend's going to come, here's $10. No, we don't allow you to do that. Suspicion. Vitem nikim. You have to be clean. No, you're not allowed to sell to yourself. You have to sell to other people, to other Jews. So says the Gemara, no. But Rav Adam Martana said that when Rav Yosef said this Gemara, he said in Mefurash, you're selling it to a goy. And that's exactly like in accordance to Rabbi Yehuda. So then that's a proof that we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. No, you have to sell to a goy, but you're not allowed to have it.
Why? Because
No, because you're not allowed to have it at all. Again, once you say within the time, so keep it for yourself. Within the fifth hour. No, one more time. Are you going like Rabbi Meir or Rabbi Yehuda? If you're going like Rabbi Meir, you sell it to another Jew, not to another goy. If you're going like Rabbi Meir, you sell it to another Jew. What? During the fifth hour. Why are you selling it to another Jew and not to yourself? Because it's cheating yourself. Okay, that's the reason. But now, what? What's the question? What do you mean by question? You didn't understand or? No. That we don't suspect. But it doesn't matter. There's no, a person, why would you want to cheat the guy that gave you the picadon to do the other guy a favor? No, but I don't have a gain. I don't have a gain. I'm the one that's selling it. I don't have the gain. What? Who's taking the money? He has to give it back to the owner. Why is it the same thing? I'm not understanding. Yeah? One more time. Yeah? It's very, very simple. I will not come and I'm not going to start doing monkey business in order to make whether it's Amichai get a buck. Maybe I would do it for myself. That yes. But not for Amichai, or not for Ronen, or not for Barak, and not for Ronen, or not for Simon, for no one. For myself, yes. You understand? But not for En Adam Chotev Velo Lo. It's a general rule in halakha, which means I will not come and sin if I don't have a benefit from it. So here, the guy comes and he gives me a picadon. It's the big thing. If I'm going to sell it to myself, I'm going to depreciate the value. I'm going to say, you know what? Maybe it's not worth as much. But all of a sudden now I'm going to sell it to Barak. All of a sudden I'm going to say, you know what? I want you to lose, right? You're the picadon, the bala picadon. I want you to lose and I want Barak to gain.
No, you split with Barak the difference.
No, that we don't suspect. Doing those things, you don't do. For that, you might as well just steal it. That there's no purpose. We don't. There's We don't suspect to stealing. No, it's not corrupted because he could give it to himself for a cheaper price. That the majority of people do it anyway. But they say, listen, it's going to get lost anyway. So if it's going to get lost anyway, I could sell it to myself at depreciated value. But now when you're going to the marketplace, there's a value, there's a market value. So now that's not the same thing. So it's not the same thing. Fine. So afterwards, so the Gemara now comes and the Gemara says as follows. So it says, Amalei Abaye. Abaye comes and he says, wasn't it mentioned that the machloket, right, between the Tanakama and Rashbag was only in a case where they were actually depreciating from the value, but if they're depreciating more than the regular value, then even according to Tanakama, you're allowed to sell it in Bedin. So Kol Sheken here, if you're going to leave it in your possession, it's going to be completely lost because now it becomes Chametz, Shavar Lo Pesach, Kaddish. So here for sure you're able to sell it. So says the Gemara, another question, right? Sorry, that's it. Yeah, we're on the 2 dots. Okay, 2 dots. Ve'od Amar Rav Yehuda, says Rav Yehuda, Shtei Chalot. We're talking about the 2 different breads of the Todah, which are psulot. They used to put on Erev Pesach on the Itzteba, on the big piece of like a stone in Harabait. And what happened is that when they had both of them out, you were able to eat chametz. They took one out, you would stop eating chametz. When they took the second one off, you would burn the chametz. So Tani Tanakamed Rav Yehuda, they taught him from Rav Yehuda, he says, why do you have to put it on the Itzteba? What are you putting here on the Itzteba? So he says, what? You have to come and you have to like hide it? What, the Shliach HaBedin has to come and place the chalot there to take it off? What's the entire purpose of putting it there? So Tani al Gaga Itzteba. It wasn't on top of the Itzteba, it was on the Gag of the Itzteba, which means that it was on top of the roof of the Harabai. There was a Gag. Why was there a Gag? To protect, for the roof was there to protect for rains. And therefore there, they put it there in order that everyone could see it. Meaning it wasn't just on top of the Itzteba that nobody could see it because Itzteba is like a piece of stone. No, it was on the roof. Once it's on the roof, everybody was able to see it. Okay? Right? Now, Derech Agav says the Gemara, Amar Rachava Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Harabait Setav Kafulaya. So Harabait was actually like a stav kaful. What does that mean? It was 2 shurot of itztabelt used to come around the Harabait from inside, shura betoch shura, which means that it was 1 row within another row. Okay? Chaval that we don't have the pictures anymore. What can we do? So it was like a stav kaful. So it says the Gemara, Tani Miyachli, we also learned it in Raita. Harabait stav kaful ayar, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, istevenit aytanikret. It was called an istevenit, which is a stav name stav. Okay? So the Gemara says psulot. What does it mean psulot? Am I psulot? Why are they psulot? Why did it have to be that the breads of the Todah were breads which were psulot? So it says the Gemara, Amar B'chanina, says B'chanina, mitoch shayu merubot nifsalo belina. Since there was so many of them on the 13th of Nisan, so therefore they were pasul belina. Belina means that they were leftovers. Remember that the korbanot have a certain amount of time, and after that amount of time, they become disqualified because of leftovers. So it says here the same thing. The Tanya was learned in a Braita. Emevin Todah. You're not allowed to bring a korban todah and chag hamatzot. Why? In the chametz sheba, because that's chametz. Remember, korban todah, how many loaves? 40. 40 loaves.
10.
How many of chametz?
10 chametz.
10. 10 of chametz, 30 of matzah, and each one was a separate type of like a bread or a separate type of a matzah, right? So the grain, it was the same grain, but just like different ways of making the cookies and all those things, right? Because of chametz. So it says in Pshita, obviously. So here we're talking about the 14th. The Kasavar, so he holds, En mevin kodshim lebet apsul. You're never allowed to come, and that's why the reason why we don't say mizmor letodah on Erev Pesach or on Erev Kippur. This is actually the Ramah. Edot Mizrach do say it, but Moroccans don't say it. And the reason why Moroccans don't say it is what we just mentioned here, because you're not going to bring it on Erev Pesach. Erev Pesach, you're allowed to eat chametz, yeah, but you're not allowed to eat chametz all day. So what's going to happen is, for sure, you're going to throw some out in the garbage. So because of that, Erev Pesach, you're not allowed to bring the Korban Todah. So you can't say to bring the Korban Todah. You don't say Mizmor LeTodah. You don't say it not on Erev Pesach and not on Chol Hamoed Pesach and not on Erev Kippur for the same reason. Because in Erev Kippur, you would not be able to eat it on the night of Kippur, and then you're throwing it to waste. So the same thing, we don't throw things to waste. You understand? That's a musar that you're going to take out from today. You don't throw things to waste. Capish? Bal tashchit. V'kule alma b'shlosha maitelu. But everyone's bringing it on the 13th. So the fact that there's going to be so many of them, that's why they're going to be pasul belina. So mishum, that means because there were so many of the korban todah, that means imagine all the people bringing korban todah, korban. So there's going to be some which are going to be pasul b'dina, which means that they're going to be pasul in the fact that they were left over. So it says mishum Rabbeinu Amru. In the name of Rabbeinu, they said kisherotayu. Really, be'emet, they were kasher breads. Ve'ela mai kadi lehu psulot. So why are they called psulot? Shelo nishchat alehen hazavach. Because they didn't slaughter the korban todah on it, which means the behemah which was brought with the bread, right? They didn't bring it together. And therefore, it wasn't fitting for consumption yet. Okay? Because since it wasn't brought at the same time, that's why it's considered like psulot. So the Gemara says, so bring the animal. And so the Gemara, shavad hazevach, you lost the animal. Since you lost the animal, so says the Gemara, so bring another animal and then slaughter it. Says the Gemara, de'amar zot todah. You said this is a todah, ve'zo lachman, this is the bread of the todah. And like Rabbah, because Rabbah says, if you lost the bread, you're allowed to bring another bread. If you lost the todah, you cannot bring another todah. What's the reasoning? Lechem biglal todah. The bread comes because of the korban todah, but the todah does not come because of the lechem. Which means you have two factors here. A korban todah, which is a sacrifice of saying thanksgiving, thank you to Hashem, that comes thanking Hashem, correct? Thank you, Hashem. Yeah. So thank you, Hashem. What do? You bring a korban and you bring the breads. Okay? You have to bring both. If you do not bring the korban, you cannot eat the breads. However, though, what happens if I said, this is the korban and this is the bread? Once you say this is the korban, if that korban gets lost or stolen, kaddish. That's it. You lost everything. You have to, everything disqualified. Says the Gemara, bring another one. No. You said this one. What about the breads get lost? If the breads get lost, you're allowed to. You're allowed to bring other breads. Why? Because the breads are coming because of the todah. The todah does not come because of the bread. Meaning, what's the main factor? The main factor is the korban. And therefore, no, right now, I'm going to say, this is my korban todah, and this is my bread. And then after a few days, dropped dead, got lost, ran over, whatever it was. So then that's, the regular laws of Hakadosh. So says the Gemara, v'nifrekinu v'nafkina lechulin. So just redeem it and take it out to chulin. So says the Gemara, no, you did actually slaughter the zevach, v'nishpach adam, but the blood spilled. Once the blood spilled, let's say you lost out. Uchman like who? Like Rebbe. The Amar Rebbe, because Rebbe says, Shne dvarim matirim ma'alin ze belo ze. There are two things which permit the korban, and what happens is there's a problem of me'ilah, right? Ma'alin ze belo ze, which means it brings it up, even though you're not going to permit the second one. The Tanya was we learned to the Braita. Kivsei atzeret, right? It says over here the kvasim that was brought on Shavuot. Amichai was right. How many breads do you bring on Shavuot? Two. Yeah, the korban, that's there, it's two breads. Okay? So they don't sanctify the lechem only with shchita.
Bring two. If there is only one, then we can have remove two.
No, you're talking about the two breads. The two breads. Yes. Exactly. To tell everybody that now they have to burn the chametz. Yes. Okay? But it was the 2 out of the 40 though. That's what we're okay? No, 2 is they're allowed to eat. You remove 1, you stop eating, now you have to wait. You remove the second one, now you have to burn. Says the Gemara, Kate said, what's the case? Shechtan lishman, if you slaughtered it lishman and then you threw the blood, kidesh alechem. So then you sanctify the bread. Shechtan shelo lishman, if you slaughtered it not lishma, v'zeraktaman shelo lishman, and then you spilled the blood, lo kidesh alechem, you didn't sanctify the bread. Shechtan lishman v'zeraktaman shelo lishman. What happens if you slaughtered it and you spilled the blood, shelo lishman, lechem kadosh, ve'eno kadosh. The bread is holy, but right mitzad sheni, it's not kadosh, right? So basically, what happens is the lechem is kadosh and not kadosh. These are the words of Rabbi. Rabbi Elazar Shimon says, "Leolam eno kadosh lechem at sheyishchot lishman." It's never going to be kadosh the bread until you actually do shchita lishma and yizrok taman lishma, which comes out like this. According to this bed of Rabbi Yanai that we just said before, he's going like shitat Rabbi. That according to that chalot todah, they become kadosh b'kedushat haguf when you come and you do it lishma, and then, right from then on, you cannot redeem it. That means the second that you do a lishma, so this is going back to Zivachim and Menachol, what we learned before, if you remember, the end of Daf Yomi last cycle, that we spoke about that whenever you're bringing a sacrifice, you always have to bring it lishma. Lishma means for the sake of that sacrifice. The second that you change, it could become pigul, or it could become, you understand, like there's a few different things there. Okay, fine. So says the Gemara, afilu tema, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, even if you're going to tell me it's Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, what we're dealing with, you accepted the blood in a cup and then it spilled. Because the second that it was fitting to throw it, it's like you already spilled the blood, which means like this. Usually, once the blood spills, Kaddish, there's nothing what to do. Because the blood has to be poured on the Mizbeach in order to permit the sacrifices being eaten. But if it was spilled and it went onto the Mizbeach, so then now you can't do anything with it. So says the Gemara, Tana Mishum Rabbi Lazar, we learned to the name of Rabbi Lazar, Kesherot hayu. Really, these breads were kesherot. As long as it was there, everyone was eating. Once you took one of them, tolin, right? Lo ochlin velo sorfin, they wouldn't eat it, but they wouldn't burn it. Once you took both of them off, then you would come and start burning it. Tanya ben Shaul Omer says about Shaul, shte parot ayu chorshot behara mishcha. There were two different cows that were plowing on the 14th of Nisan in Behara Zetim. Kozman sheshten chorshot, as long as both of them were plowing, kol ha'mochlin, everyone was eating. Once they took one cow away, they used to be tolin, lo ochlin velo sorfin. They wouldn't eat, but they wouldn't burn. Once they took away the two cows, so basically the exact same type of a concept they used to do also on Har Zetim in order to remind everyone, once they took both cows away, then they used to be sorfin et chametz. They used to actually come and burn the. So Kalkadosh, we're continuing now in Daf Yudalad Amud Aleph, the Mishnah, but we're going to give the introduction. The introduction says, this is the Akdama, the introduction for the Sugya of Rabbi Chanina and Segana Kohanim. So this is going to be, basically, this is going to go until the end of the Perek. So the entire next, until the end of the Perek Rishon. So basically, this is going until Daf Kaf Aleph Amud Aleph. So you're talking about Yudalid until Kaf Aleph. Okay, so 14 till 21. Okay, it's a good 7 dafim. We're only going to do the introduction. That's it. Okay, so the introduction. Yeah, so the introduction says like this. Okay, so the Gemara is going to speak about Tumah v'Tahara. Now it says already like this. The Noseh of the Mishnah, which means the topic of the Mishnah is, how do we do with Srefat Trumat Chametz be'erev Pesach? So now we're going to burn, again, Trumat Chametz. Truma is only eaten by Kohanim. What happens when you have that Trumat Chametz on erev Pesach? Why? We have a general rule by Truma that you have to watch it from becoming Tameh. Meaning you, as every single Jew, is obligated to make sure that Truma never becomes Truma Tmeah. Because it says, Vani hine nateti lechat mishmeret trumotai, which means, kal vachomer, that you have to actually walk through over it. Kal vachomer shasul tameh biyadayim, which means, if I have to make sure that it doesn't become Tameh, kal vachomer, that I'm not allowed to come and I'm not allowed to actually be mitameh. Okay? If it touches Tumah, any type of Tumah, whether it's dead, yeah, the food of that touches with his hands, it could be a dead body, it could be a sheret, and a creepy crawler, or anything of Tumah.
So not only
Everybody has to watch over. But I'm not allowed to eat it, so there's not a lot of purpose that I would have the Tumah. I would usually give it to a Kohen, obviously, because the Kohen's allowed to eat it. Okay? Now, V'yesh ladun, so now we're going to say, Ha'im mishum kach yasu gam mitzvot Trumat Chametz Tahara im Tmeah ber Pesach. So now 1 second. If I'm not allowed to come and to impurify Truma Tehora, so can I burn it together with Truma Tmeah on Erev Pesach? Meaning I already have Truma Tmeah, so it became impure. The halacha is the second you have Truma Tmeah, you have to burn it. It's Erev Pesach. Anyway, I can't eat any more Truma because it's Chametz, it's Trumat Chametz. I mean, they made out of it Chametz. They made loaves, they made bread. So now the question is, can I burn them together? Because anyway, I'm burning them. Right? Trumat Tmeah and Trumat Tehora. That's the question. Mikevan shebekach metameh et Trumat Tehora biyadayim. Or maybe me'achar sheben kach teuna Trumat Srefa en isul letameh. Maybe there's no isul, but anyway, I have to burn it. So, right? And then you're going to be permitted. This is a machloka between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yosef. Okay? There's a machloka between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yosef. Now, with this, we have this Mishnah with the edut, with the testimony of Rabbi Chanina Segana Kohanim, that he permitted you to burn besar kodesh, right? That has a darga nemucha shel tuma, in basar sheyesh bo darga tuma chamura yoter, which means not to do with truma, but kodesh. Kodesh is holy types of foods. Chatat, hasham, certain things of kodesh. So therefore there, the Segana, Rabbi Chanina and Segana Kohanim came and he gave a testimony, not about Trumat Tehora and Trumat Tmeah, because that's a machloka between Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Meir, but rather to do with basar kodesh, that there were different levels of receiving Tumah, that you are allowed to come and you're allowed to burn it. So Rabbi Kiva said something very similar to do with Tumah. So now that we're dealing with the words and the explanation of Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Chanina, and the machloket of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yosef, the Gemara is going to come and speak about all the different levels of Tumah. So we have, the Ava Tuma, which is the father of the Tuma, the Rishon, Sheni. So just to make everything very, very clear, right? So now we're going to give the introduction because this is where it gets, the heavy duty. Okay, so now, Mekorot Tuma. Where does Tuma come from? Kol Tumot Torah. Any type of Tuma in the Torah, Mekora mibnei Adam balei chayim. They always come from a human being or from an animal. For example, Adam met, a human being that dies, or Nevelot shel Behemot, Chayot ve'ofot, or Nevela. Nevela is a carcass, whether it's of a wild animal, a bird, domesticated animal, V'shel Shatzim Mitzuyamim, or certain types of creepy crawlers, or Me'adam Chay, or even from a human being in certain cases. So now, Mekorot Tuma milevad met, Kruim balacha, Avatuma. Okay, so that means, right, usually the Mekor of the Tuma is called Avatuma. He's called the father because he makes other things. Right? Just like a father procreates, so to the Avatuma makes other things also tameh. Shem ze amul lemaaseh al kol davar hametameh adam vekelim. On anything which is going to be metameh, a human being, and utensils. Vechol mekorot hatuma dinam kach, and all of them are the same. Ulam yeshu metameh adam vekelim v'kreu avatuma. Av she'eno mekor hatuma. But there's something that even though it's not a mekor hatuma, it's also going to be metameh adam vekelim. For example, adam shenitma mimet, which means if you have a human being that he becomes tamemet, right? Hamet atzmo is called avi havota tuma. So the worst type of a tuma in the world is a met. He is avi avota tuma, the father of the fathers of tuma. Okay, so he's going to come and he's going. So mikevan shadam shenitma mimenu nasa avatuma. So therefore, you're always going down a level. So if the human being, which is a met, is avi avota tuma, if a human being touches that deceased, he becomes avatuma. But for example, other scenarios where it's an avatuma, so whatever touches that, what's it going to become? A rishon or a sheni, because each one is going down in level, right? You will keep on coming further removed, okay? So mikabel tuma, another halacha, very important. What is mikabel tuma? So says the Gemara, right? Says the introduction, מקור הטומאה יכול לטמא דברים אחרים הראויים לקבל טומאה, ופעמים שאף מקבלי הטומאה יכולים לטמא דברים. So I mean, sometimes it could receive טומאה, and that could continue the chain. And sometimes the chain is cut off. Meaning certain times the chain is going to be cut off, that you were metameh that thing, but then that thing cannot be metameh something else. And it continues going. We're going to explain. So it says, רק בני אדם וכלים, אוכלים ומשקים, מקבלים טומאה. Only human beings, utensils, which includes clothing, אוכלים ומשקים, food and drink, they receive טומאה. Now, bedin mashkin, to do with the drinks, נחלקו התנאים. There's a מחלוקת תנאים. Some people hold שהם נטמעים ומטמאים דברים אחרים מן התורה, which means מן התורה, a liquid can receive tuma and can transfer tuma. Okay? יש סוברים, other people hold, שנטמעים מן התורה, they do receive tuma, but they do not מטמא דברים אחרים. Some people hold it's not מקבל tuma at all מן התורה, and it's only מדרבנן. הלכה כדעה שמקבלים tuma מן התורה, אבל אין המטמאים דברים אחרים מן התורה. So the Rambam comes in Paskins, middle grounds. What was the middle ground? The first one is, it's tameh u'metameh. It receives tuma and it transfers tuma mina Torah. Second one, which is the middle grounds, it receives mina Torah, but does not transfer mina Torah. The third one, it doesn't receive at all mina Torah. So we pass like the middle grounds. It receives, but does not transfer mina Torah. Okay? But derech klal, in a general rule, that right, it says here, dargat tuma shel mekabel tuma kala mishel hametameo bedarga achat. You always go down one level, which means, for example, if you're talking about Ilchot Shabbat, you take water from the urn was like a kli rishon. Your cup becomes a kli sheni. You pour it into another cup, it becomes a kli shlishi. The exact same thing is with tuma. The more that you continue transferring on, the more it becomes a lower level. Right? It becomes diluted. It becomes lower level. Yes, exactly. Okay? So it says here, b'darga achat. So he says, "Hamkabel tuma me'ava tuma." He doesn't become an ava tuma, right? Hametameh adam vekelim, ela rishon letuma. Hametameh ochlin u'mashkin bilvad. Which means an ava tuma could be metameh all four categories: human beings, animals, right? Human beings, utensils, food, and drink. Everything. The one that receives it, that he becomes a rishon, right? He can only be metameh, right? Adam vekelim, right? Sorry, the rishon letuma, can only be mitameh ochlin umashkin, but not upwards. Exactly, not the human beings. V'amkabel tuma min rishon, right? He becomes a sheni. So now the rishon is also called vlada tuma, and a sheni is called vlada tuma. Because if you're already talking about fathers, so you're talking about sons. Vlad is a child. So vlada tuma means the child of the tuma. And vlad is twice removed, the child of a child. So instead of calling it rishon, sheni, whichever, but it's the same thing. Okay? Now, our Mishnah is also going to say, Kol she'enu ava tuma afilu sheni bemunach vlada tuma. Okay, fine. Kemochen. Now, what do we say? We already explained that a dead person is considered avi avot tuma. A human being that becomes tameh from him becomes an ava tuma. If he touches someone else, right, or other foods, he makes him into a rishon, and they only could make food and drinks into a sheni, and that onwards. Okay.
So the future tumah will only come from the food and from the drink.
Yes.
And the drink will, the drink stops.
Yeah, very good. It could stop. Very good. It could stop. Very good. Very good. Ulam yeshenasa nitma ketumasa. Sometimes the tum'ah becomes the exact same level as the tameh. Also, sometimes the tum'ah becomes the exact same level as the mitameh, as the one that's impurified. So, for example, kli matechet shenaga bemet. If you have a metal utensil that touched the deceased person, it became right shenasa avi avot tuma kemet atzmo. Why? Because cherev hareu kechalal. The sword, right, becomes like the halal, like the dead body. So if you have a sword that comes and kills a human being, that sword becomes avi avot tuma, which means that the metal gets the same level as the tuma, which is the met here. So you're right. That means sometimes you will have that the tuma gets the exact same level as the tuma. Very good. So therefore, it's going to become an av. So it could be a mitameh adam vekelim to become an avatuma. Ukli matechet shenaga be'adam shenitmamet shu avatuma. He also becomes an avatuma. Umitameh adam vekelim. So it comes out that by matechet, by metals, you always stay the same level. Meaning, I'm a human being. I touch the deceased. He's an avi avot. I become an av. I touched another human being. He becomes a rishon. He touches you. You become a sheni. And then that's it. Oh, we're going to see there might be another level because there does exist Shlishi and Revi. 1 minute.
But what if you touch two people at the same time?
They both become because you are. Yes, they're both Rishonim. No. It's only from him because remember, because basically when I touch you both become the original source. But when you come now touch another person, now he is not the original. He doesn't come from so he's already one step removed.
So the same thing applies to the sword. If 3-4 people touch the sword, it's only the first one that becomes
all the people that touched it, they become the same as the sword. What was the sword?
So
Aviyavot.
100 people can touch the sword,
and all 100 people become Aviyavot tuma. Yeah.
But if you touch 100 people, they're all Rishonim.
Yep, that's what's coming out.
Oh.
Okay, next. Sometimes tum'ah doesn't go down one level. Sometimes tum'ah goes down 2 levels. How? Right? She'ochlin, right? Mashkinu kle cheres. Afilu im nagu bemet atzmo, enam naasim avatuma ela rishon. When you have the food, drink, or earthenware utensils, not metal, earthenware utensils that touched a met, the met is aviyavot tuma, correct? They become rishon. So it skips out 2 levels. Aviyavot goes down to av, goes down to rishon. So it goes down 2 levels from the aviyavot to an av to a rishon. It's a rishon. A human being touches a met, he's an av.
And if it's the clay,
also rishon. And drink. מאחר שאדם וכלים מקבלים טומאה מן התורה רק מאב הטומאה, since a human being and utensil will only become tameh min Torah only from an ava tuma, okay? So it comes out that they cannot she'em ba'em pachot midargat rishon. So min Torah it will never go down less than a rishon. Meaning a human being or a utensil can never become a sheni. The maximum, meaning not the maximum, meaning the lowest form of tuma that they could have is a rishon. But since the ochlin umashkin they never become an av, they only become a rishon. So therefore, yesh b'hem rak midargat rishon lemata. Meaning Since they could only go from here downwards, they can't go upwards, but they never become an Av. Which one? No, the Adam, since the Adam can only he becomes either an Av or a Rishon, so underneath the Rishon, he will never become underneath the Rishon. Meaning, I went and I touched a deceased. The deceased was Avi Avot. I became an Av. I touched Amichai. What does Amichai become? Rishon. If Amichai touches you, no, nothing. Mina Torah, nothing. Why? Because a human being or clothing or utensils cannot go lower than a Rishon. After Rishon, it gets cut off. No, it doesn't contradict.
Now it's from the Torah.
The right. One second. Now, Dargot Tuma be'ochlinu mashkin. No. 1 minute. Now we're going to speak about Dargot Tuma and ochlinu mashkin. Bechulin, there's only until a sheni. Chulin is regular food. By regular food, nothing of holy, not truma, not kodesh, nothing. So by regular food, it only goes until a sheni, which means that if chulin touched an avatuma becomes a rishon, anything that it touches becomes a sheni. But if it touches a sheni, it does not become a shlishi. It stops after a sheni. The mekor for tumat sheni bechulin is from the din of shratzim. There by sheretz it says, when a sheretz is mitameh kli, it becomes a kli rishon. Ukli zeh chozer umetameh ochlin o mashkin v'oseh sheni, and it makes a sheni. However, though Rabbi Akiva is doresh from the pasuk, that he wants to say that a sheni makes a shlishi chulin min Torah, but everybody else argues on Rabbi Akiva. Okay? You're right. But that's a Rabbi Akiva, but we argue on Rabbi Akiva. Now, in Truma, it goes to a shlishi. And in Kodesh, it goes into a Revi. So let's explain one more time. Chulin is regular food. Chulin goes maximum sheni. Teruma is a higher level. Since Teruma is a surah lezarim, meaning a stranger is not allowed to eat it, it's a higher level, so it goes even to a shlishi. Kodesh is a higher level of that. Because the Kohanim have to eat it b'klushav tara and have to eat it in a certain time. The Kodesh is like korbanot. So therefore, Kodesh is a higher level, it becomes even a Revi. Okay? Next, en tuma oseka yotzeba. There's a klal, a general rule in Chulin, that mina Torah, ochel cannot be mitameh another ochel, and mashke cannot be mitameh another mashke. Okay, very good. Lemashal, for example, ochel rishon is going to be mitameh mashke to make it into a sheni, but it's not mitameh another ochel. And mashke rishon can be mitameh an ochel to make it sheni, but it cannot be another mashke. However, though midrabbanan, ochli mitamim ochlin mashkin mashkin. That means ochlin could work with mashkin and mashkin could work with ochlin. But the same type of a scenario, food with food or liquid with liquid, mina Torah, no. But midrabanan, yes. Minyan truma ve'kodshim, there's a machloket amorim in the Gemara. According to one shita, also by truma and kodshim, right, ochel cannot be mitameh ochel, and mashke cannot be mitameh mashke. According to the other one, it could. And according to the third shita, only in kodshim, right, but only in kodshim tum'ah does it make it mina Torah. Okay? Fine. Next. Mashke bemitchavachaya. There's a din miuchad in the sugya to do with liquids in the Bet HaMikdash, which are not mekabel tumah. The Gemara is going to bring down that this is only according to the mandamar that says the mashkim mekablim tumah only midrabanan. And the Bet HaMikdash, they didn't decree midrabanan in order not to have too much tumah in the Bet HaMikdash. However, though, if you're going to tell me it's doraita, so they argue on this. And they hold that even in the Bet HaMikdash, mashkin could become tameh. Okay? However, though, there is a shita in the Gemara that's halacha l'Moshe Sinai that even mashkin mekablim tumah min Torah, and the Bet HaMikdash it's not mekabel tumah. There's a machloket in the Gemara to do with mashke bemitbachaya, to do with mashkin of the Bet HaMitbachayim sheba'azara, which means you have mashkin, liquids, in the Bet HaMitbachayim, in the butcher house, in the azara, because that's where they used to do the slaughtering. For example, dama korbanot, blood of the korbanot, or water that they come and they wash out. Those are called mashke bemitbachaya, mashkin akrevim al mizbeach, which is the dama korbanot or the shuman of the menachot or the yain and mayim of the menachot, right? All these things. So there's a whole machloket over there. Next, tameh ve'pasul. What is tameh ve'pasul? דבר שטומאתו חמורה כל כך, שיכול לטמא דברים אחרים שהם בני אותה דרגה קדושה, קרוי טמא. ואילו דבר שאינו יכול לטמא דברים אחרים, בני אותה דרגה, קרוי פסול. Which means like this. What's the difference between the word טמא, impure, and pasul, disqualified? So it says, the general rule is that something that is so strict that it could be mitameh other things in the same darga is called tameh. Because tameh means it's not only just it's impure, it could impure others. Mitameh, like mitameh. Pasul just means disqualified. It becomes disqualified, but it could not disqualify others. So therefore he says, Lefizeh, Harishon bechulin is tameh. Hasheni bechulin is called pasul. Right? By truma, the sheni is tameh. Shlishi is pasul. By kodesh, the shlishi is tameh. The revi'i is pasul. You understand? That means the terminology used, tameh and pasul, depends whether it could continue the chain or it breaks the chain. Exactly, the last one. So the pasul just means it's disqualified, but that's it. But it cannot continue contaminating. So that's the tameh. Next, tvul yom umechusar kippurim. Yeah, we're the second last one, right? And then there's one more, and then that's it. And then we get to the Mishnah. So it says, right, tvul yom umechusar kippurim. After a person that is tameh, right, he does tevilah, which means that he goes to the mikveh. So what happens is that his level of tumah diminishes a little bit. And therefore, he's considered a sheni letumah, right? Which is going to be posel tumah, but not chulin, until herev shemesh. What is herev shemesh? Until the sun goes down. So a person became tameh, he would go to the mikveh. Now his status quo went down a little bit of tumah, but he's still not 100% pure. He's called tvul yom. Yes, he can't touch tumah there. He's still called the tvul yom. Benam yaya mitchila rishon letumah, or even anava tumah, doesn't matter. Now, during the time from the tevilah until the nighttime, he's called a tvul yom, which is posel truma b'magao. He disqualifies truma by touching it, but not chulin. Okay? Now, it says over here, okay, by yoledet, it's a little bit different, by tvulat yom. Okay, fine. Now, the zav zava, I'm almost finished. One more minute, yeah? Yeah, one more minute. It says, zav zava yoledet u'mitzora, enam nitarim legamre betzet ha'kochavim shelachar tvilatam, but they have a korban afterwards. Meaning, person was tameh, he goes to the mikveh. He already goes down in level. Nighttime, he's completely pure. By a zav, a male that has seminal discharge, zava, yoledet, a woman that gives birth, and a mitzora, a person that has leprosy, what happens? He says over here, in such a case, enam nitarim legamre. They don't become pure completely, betzet kochavim, but rather they have to wait the next day until they bring a korban. Okay? And that's why that means the erev shemesh is one thing, but then there's something which is called mechusar kippurim. Mechusar kippurim means he's lacking like kippur, but really means he's lacking kapara. Kapara means he's lacking atonement, which is the korban the next day. Last one, truma vekodesh nitmeu. Truma vekodesh becomes tameh, you have to burn them. However, though, in the difference between kodshim tmeim is that you're not allowed to benefit from them during the time that you're burning it. You're allowed to give to a kohen to benefit from truma during the time of burning. So, for example, right? Let's say I have truma that became tameh. I have to burn it. I can't benefit. But I could give it to Ronen, and what Ronen is going to do is going to put it underneath his pot, and he's going to use it as bonfire, as like coals. He's allowed to use it. No problem. That's truma, not kodesh. Right? For example, you could use it under his pot, or you could malik ner b'shemesh shel truma shel tmeah chulin, or you're allowed to eat it, and anything, even if it's tameh or pasul, because chulin is not taor. So meaning a regular croissant. Regular croissant is chulin. So that, even if you're tameh, you don't care. But if it's truma, then you have a problem. Right? Or if it's kodesh, you have a problem. But if it's not, do whatever you want. Okay? So with this, we actually finished the introduction.